Hello, I'm Walter Drazen, independent candidate for Mayor of Binghamton. I'm running for mayor not to get a job, not to get higher office, but to get my hometown back on top. Here's the pledge I make to Binghamton's beleaguered taxpayers. If at the end of my first term, your city taxes are not lower than they are now, I will not seek a second term. Here's the plan. First, the plan is a long-term vision, not my version of a you make the budget video game preceded by eye-glazing disclaimers and accompanied by a straw man challenge or wager. Since I would not have to submit a budget, the 2011 budget, until August 2010, there will be no line-by-line presentation. Likewise, the plan does not pretend the city's fiscal woes all commenced the moment the current administration took office, and that up till then, there had been no such problems. That is exactly the sort of cliche-driven, cookie-cutter partisanship that has hurt the city and from which we need to get away as quickly as possible. I recognize what Binghamton now faces is the result of a long period of short-term thinking, extending over multiple administrations and gripping both political parties. Accordingly, my plan is heavily weighted toward long-term solutions, is based in no way upon near-term political considerations, and will, above all else, put necessity before luxury. Every city department and every city facility will be examined for ways to save taxpayer dollars. I will begin in my own office, where there will no longer be a receptionist or typist. In fact, City Hall has entirely too many receptionists, typists, phone lines, and fax machines, all of which could be reduced by relatively simple measures or replaced by existing technology. Instead of paying for a receptionist in every office, there will be a general reception area outside the elevators on each floor. So one person will be doing the work that 4 or 5 are doing now. The flow of people throughout the building would be better controlled, making a safer work environment with less distractions, which would mean higher productivity. Instead of paying for someone typing or doing data entry in every office, there will be a central data processing room. Central data processing could be staffed by 3 or 4 people doing the work more than a dozen are currently doing and actually doing it better. Right now, City Hall has over 30 different phone numbers. I propose to end that unnecessarily costly and inefficient practice. There should be one general city phone number, along with rollover lines, that will ring into a central switchboard. In every instance, callers would initially speak to a human being, then have their call routed to the appropriate person. There is a system called e-fax that renders fax machines unnecessary. Not having to purchase, power, and maintain them will yield savings to taxpayers, as will the reductions in personnel I just discussed. So will increased productivity yielded by going to a central data processing and a central switchboard. Restructuring must extend into all public services, where the guiding principle will be less management, more manpower. I believe the police and fire departments, for example, are top-heavy, and further believe that situation can be addressed, while actually boosting police presence on the street and maintaining our ability to provide professional, high-quality fire protection. Long-term solutions can not only include cutting expenditures. Revenue must be considered, and I have a number of proposals. A disturbing trend linking the current administration and its predecessor is the proliferation of so-called not-for-profits taking up increasing amounts of property in the city and taking it off the tax rolls. The result has been nearly half the city's property paying little or nothing in property taxes. Put another way, about half the property in the city is shouldering the entire property tax burden. That is unfair, unsustainable, and unacceptable. To address that situation, I propose several things. Within 30 days of taking office, the owners of such properties will be notified that as of March 1st, 2010, they will be responsible for transporting their own trash to the county landfill. The immediate benefit of such a move, which can be accomplished by executive decision and in no way infringes upon any rights, will be less wear and tear on city equipment, less fuel consumption, lower fuel costs, and less man-hours required for trash collection. Those savings can be passed back to taxpayers, directed into other endeavors like snow removal, or a combination of such things. In order to ease the burden on those paying in, we must increase the number of properties paying in, not decrease them. As part of that effort, I will ask City Council to enact a local law pursuant to New York State Real Property Tax Law Section 420B, which allows local taxation of certain nonprofits. Additionally, My administration will aggressively pursue voluntary payments from nonprofit property owners. Metro Interfaith, which operates elderly housing in Binghamton, makes such a payment every year and would be a good model to follow. Finally, I will hold weekly press conferences where I will discuss, among other things, those nonprofits that have been helpful and those that have not, which will introduce a long missing factor into the equation: shame. I consider very few things as important as the crushing tax burden being heaped on city property owners, and will act accordingly. The result will be an easing of that burden. Another way to get more property paying in is for the city to divest itself of demonstrably losing propositions like the Ely Park Golf Course and city facilities whose operating costs can no longer be justified. Between 2002 and 2007, a time period that bridges the current administration and its predecessor, the golf course lost an average of $165,000 yearly. Both had the chance to end that problem, but refused. I will end it. My preferred method of doing so will be to sell the golf course. That would translate into a substantial one-time property tax cut. Not only would selling the course have that benefit, there would be an immediate and long-term savings of wear and tear on city equipment, fuel savings, and significant man-hour savings, all of which could be reallocated into other services or passed back to the taxpayer. Most importantly, instead of increasing the burden on taxpayers as it has, the course would begin paying in and easing that burden. Unfortunately, this very sensible proposal has generated controversy. The current mayor claims a sale would be illegal, as if I have suggested merely planting a "for sale by owner" sign in front of the course is all that would be needed. I understand it would not be quite so easy, but it is not impossible as has been suggested. It requires a process. That process could have begun years ago by the current administration or its predecessor, but they either thought little of such an idea or didn't think of it at all. Had they done so, the course would already be generating benefits for all taxpayers instead of increasing the burden upon them. As mayor, I would commence that process immediately upon taking office. It's time to end the massive financial losses currently being passed on to taxpayers and create the savings on wear and tear to city equipment, man-hours, fuel, and water. Regarding the West Street Fire Station, it can be closed, sold to private interests, and put back on the tax rolls without compromising safety. According to MapQuest, the 180 Main Street Fire Station is only 1/2 mile from West Street. It calculates the drive time at 1 minute, and that's in a non-emergency vehicle without ability to control traffic lights traveling within the speed limit. 180 Main Street is a better equipped station, and according to MapQuest, is actually closer than West Street to the furthest point in the First Ward. That's 1 Ely Park Boulevard. Nonetheless, highly emotional pleas about the impact on the First Ward's elderly have been made, as well as histrionic threats about lives being endangered or even lost by the station closing. But with the station open, lives were unfortunately lost to fire less than a mile away from it recently. It just doesn't make sense to have two fully staffed facilities a mere 60 seconds away from each other. It's a burden taxpayers cannot afford. First Ward elderly homeowners arguably face a greater risk of losing their homes to unaffordably high taxes than to fire. If Binghamton's taxpayers are going to get the break they desperately need, they need political leadership that will tell them what they need to know, and not just what they want to hear on such issues. Neither the current administration or its predecessor provided that kind of leadership. I will. And the elderly, who are being taxed right out of town, will directly benefit. So will everyone else, because the more the tax base can be broadened, the lighter the load will be on those already paying in. For the city to get headed back in the right direction, that has to happen soon.